polluted river, illegal dumps, or maybe waste being transported from the other end of Europe. Today we're getting to work at the Chief Inspectorate of Environmental Protection. You'll see their work and the challenges they face. So let's get to work.
Entities looking to get rid of waste illegally rent a warehouse like this, leave the waste in barrels or containers, and disappear after a few days without a trace.
Do you also investigate dead fish and golden algae?
Yes. This is a drone equipped with a LiDAR sensor which penetrates through layers of vegetation.
With me is Powell. Welcome.
Hi.
Your role?
Specialist in the Special Techniques team of the Department for Combating Environmental Crime. It sounds impressive, and we do work we can be proud of.
We will be in your specialized van.
In the mobile office, where we can process the collected material, from this place we can carry out flights with unmanned aerial vehicles, so-called drones. It's a very well-equipped office, thanks to which we can process all the materials right here on site.
It looks a bit like the Office of the Road Transport Inspection, because I did an episode about that too, but the activities are definitely different. What exactly do you do?
I work in a team that uses special technical equipment, including drones, ground-penetrating radar, all kinds of hidden cameras, and geodetic antennas.
That sounds even more specialized than at the very beginning, but we saw when you drove up to the building here that there was some kind of operation.
We received a report about illegal dumping of waste by a certain entity. We went to the site. The area was wooded, so it would be difficult to get through it on foot or with any kind of vehicle. We carried out a drone flight which allowed us to remove the entire layer of vegetation from the mapping. This is a drone equipped with a LiDAR sensor which uses a laser beam to penetrate the layer of vegetation and scan the ground layer. Thanks to this, we get a 3D model from which we can actually obtain all kinds of measurements, volume measurements, surface area, and all the elevation contours of such terrain. Here we have each tiny pixel, which has its own XYZ values, and these values have an error margin of 2 centimeters. So these are really very precise measurements.
Well, we don't recommend doing anything illegal, but if someone has already done something illegal or dumped trash years ago and now there are trees growing on it, are you still able to find it?
Yes, we are. We are able to locate such waste. We also had a dozen or even several dozen reports where waste was dumped in forested or wooded areas, and thanks to technology we can locate such waste, even the waste that was dumped several decades ago.
It's probably easier to find the waste than to track down who dumped it.
That's not so difficult either. The land in question belongs to someone, and through the landowner we can track down and locate the person. We cooperate with various services and law enforcement agencies, so it's not a problem for us.
Exactly. So what does your day look like? Is it everyday work here in this mobile office? Do you leave at a certain time and come back at a certain time? Or is it more from one operation to another?
It's both field work as well as desk work. The material we collect in the field we process using specialized software. It's not like we work all the time in this mobile office. We also work in a stationary office where we have much more equipment. That's where we process all the material. Often these are projects that we work on for a week or two, and from that we get precise measurements of surface area or volume, for example, of waste. The Environmental Protection Inspectorate calculates administrative penalties.
Okay, but we know that there are plenty of such illegal dumping sites in Poland. Waste is constantly being brought in from abroad. They say that Poland is the garbage dump of Europe, that such waste is brought in all the time. And exactly, do your operations also involve catching people red-handed? Do you act, I don't know, under the cover of night together with the police?
We cooperate with law enforcement agencies, with the police, with the prosecutor's office, but also with the road transport inspection you mentioned earlier, with the National Revenue Administration, with whom we carry out, let's say, stops of vehicles transporting waste. We check the waste loads, compliance with transport documents, compliance with what is entered into the waste database system, because every such transport must be registered in the waste database system, the so-called BDO.
Okay, if they're not, then you take some action. We'll check out your equipment in the back now, since that's also interesting. You're discussing major new technologies, so I'm curious what a drone with this gear looks like. Let's head to the back. And you?
Sure, right this way.
And you?
Right now my colleagues are unpacking the equipment. After the operation we can see the ground-penetrating radar which we use to scan the layers of soil, and with this device we search for waste buried in the ground. We create profiles along the designated area, then later put them together in specialized software, which gives us a kind of underground three-dimensional model. On these cross-sections we can see what is in the ground, whether there are any anomalies, and anomalies can indicate waste buried in the soil.
How deeply can you investigate this?
This particular antenna is capable of penetrating the ground up to 15 meters.
15 meters, so if someone buried something 15 meters deep, like trash, waste, barrels with some kind of liquid oil and so on.
Exactly.
With this kind of equipment, you are able to check it. Here we can also see a drone next to us, which is just unfolding.
This is one of our largest drones, which we are using to perform the previously discussed LiDAR scanning. The drone is also equipped with other sensors. It also has a camera with a 32 times optical zoom and a total hybrid zoom of 200 times. Thanks to this equipment, we are able, for example, to read license plates from a distance of 800 meters to a kilometer.
Okay.
So it really has a nice zoom. We use this equipment often. Besides the previously mentioned LiDAR, we also have drones for photogrammetry. Photogrammetry is also a kind of 3D mapping, thanks to which we can get 3D models that are more vivid in color.
All right, so you have this kind of equipment, but who, so to speak, informs you about the places you need to investigate? Do you conduct long-term investigations beforehand into criminal groups involved in waste crime? Or do you also deal with, for example, a businessman who buried 3 barrels of some kind of waste or something like that in his garden, and you go there as well?
First, let's clarify the Environmental Protection Inspectorate's role. We inspect entities that use the environment, not private individuals. Of course, both legal and illegal ones, as you mentioned, and in Poland there are a lot of such illegal entities that use the environment. In most cases, these are so-called waste mafias, which use the environment for illegal disposal of waste, sewage, or pollute the environment in other ways.
Okay, so are they investigated by you or, for example, by the police, the prosecutor's office, and then they come to you? What are the steps, let's say, in order?
It depends on who receives the report, because usually we get a report, often anonymous, about some illegal dumping or burying of waste. And whether we get the report or another service does, we simply cooperate afterwards. We work with the prosecutor's office, police, and Central Bureau of Investigation. They handle their side of it, and we handle the environmental side, so our cooperation continues.
From your experience, how many such situations are there, I don't know, in a year or a month, where you go out and find, let's say, an illegal dump?
Most often these reports turn out to be true. When we receive a report, it usually contains precise information about where something is located and who did it. The main problem we encounter is the filling of post-excavation pits, right? And very often waste is buried there. Such pits should be properly reclaimed. They can be filled with certain types of waste, let's say rubble, soil, or other similar waste, because those are also waste, but they are being filled with municipal waste, hazardous waste, waste that can pose a threat to the environment. We often see such hazardous waste abandoned in barrels, IBC containers, and that's the biggest problem we face.
Okay, so you deal with the big issues, but things like, I don't know, a small illegal dump in the forest, some kind of waste like that, that's not you?
That's not us, that's the municipalities, the municipal guards, the city guards. We really deal, just like you said, with the big issues.
In just a moment, dear viewers, we're going on an operation, but before that I wanted to ask Pavel, what could we warn viewers about, for example, so that you would have less work?
There are cases of hazardous waste being dumped in all kinds of industrial buildings and warehouses, where entities that want to get rid of this waste illegally hand it over or rent such a warehouse from a legal entity. Convincing them and declaring that these are products, they leave the waste there in barrels, in IBC containers, and after a few days they disappear, leaving no trace, and the owner of the building or warehouse is left with the problem and has to pay several or even a dozen million zlotys for the disposal of such waste. Do you know what an IBC container looks like? A container like that, 1,000 liters, and the disposal of those hazardous liquid wastes can cost from 2,000 up to even 10,000 for one IBC container. So let's imagine one truckload of such liquid waste, which can hold about 20 IBC containers. We can easily calculate how much money that is.
Right, and it's probably not just one truckload.
Exactly.
They pack dozens of those containers into a warehouse like that, and then whoever rents the warehouse has to deal with it and pay for it.
Exactly.
So how can you protect yourself from that? What can you do to avoid getting taken for a ride like that and having to pay those fines and disposal costs?
Well, we have to check the entities that give us the waste, and often there are also some intermediaries who deal with the waste. Among these intermediaries, the trail of the waste can actually get lost.
Okay.
Because as I mentioned earlier, waste transport or waste generation or any kind of storage has to be registered in the BDO waste database system. In fact, every action that ends, whether it's finding some abandoned or buried waste or not, is satisfying, because really, let's say we're curbing this kind of environmental crime.
But from your experience, do you see that when you find one, 3 more appear?
There are certain paths where a lot of criminal groups are simply connected, right? Connected with each other. And really, if we reach some kind of lead, it's like following a thread to the source, right? And I'll tell you, criminal groups with dozens of members are being broken up. There are arrests, and the waste mafias are making huge money from this. A lot of them have switched, let's say, from other illegal businesses to waste because it's a very profitable source of illegal income.
Exactly. Who would have thought? People used to talk about, I don't know, illegal oil, gasoline, alcohol transport, or drug sales, and now it's about waste. It seems like such a trivial topic. Everyone throws away or disposes of trash, but here you're talking about waste mafias that make huge amounts of money from illegal disposal.
Not many people know that, in reality, those who run some kind of business by subletting or giving a site for reclamation, or by renting a warehouse, that waste might end up there, and then he will be the owner of that waste, not the one who abandoned or left it there.
Be careful, my friends. Protect yourselves, your property, and investments to avoid trouble. Now, let's move on. We've left headquarters and arrived at the scene. We will check whether the water in the Vistula River is polluted, or maybe it is. We'll find out in a moment, but first we'll talk with Ewa about how to become an inspector in the first place. What does that career path look like?
To become an inspector, you must be a Polish citizen, you must have full legal capacity, you must have higher education, and most importantly, you cannot have been convicted by a final court judgment. Additionally, you also need to be in good physical condition and have good health, so that you can handle working in the field.
We're aiming to become inspectors and need to take a course. What is it like?
The course is a mix of theory and practice, and classes are held both in person and online. The course ends with an exam.
After finishing the course and becoming an inspector, what rates can we expect?
The starting amount is at least 5,500 gross, but it's hard to say exactly because it also depends on many factors. Which department we work in also mainly depends on our work experience. We also have to keep in mind that since we are in the civil service, employees also receive a 13th salary and long service bonuses. We also have quite a rich benefits package that will be introduced soon, and salary levels vary a lot. And it's hard to give an average amount for all positions.
But it offers a lot of room for growth, like you said, so we can really develop, and seniority and things like that all come into play.
Yes.
Into our pay, which is what we actually take home. All right, we'll get to work here. We'll move on to measurements, to checking the quality of this water, because that's the most important thing in this episode. We know that information about how to get into this profession, how to become an inspector, and how much you earn is also important information. But now let's roll up our sleeves and get to work. With me is Arto. Welcome.
Hello, I am the Chief Specialist at the Central Research Laboratory of the Chief Inspectorate of Environmental Protection. I am an employee of the field laboratory. My main duty is collecting samples, various environmental samples, soil, water, but we also collect waste.
Okay, do you later analyze these samples in the laboratory?
Yes. Today we'll show some field measurements that will be measuring the temperature of the samples, measuring pH, conductivity, and also oxygen. These are parameters that allow us to quickly determine whether a given sample, in this case water, is already contaminated, and we can say that something is wrong. For example, if we have a plant that discharges sewage into a river, and that does happen, it still happens, although it's becoming less common. But such situations do happen. So now, the Provincial Inspectorate for Environmental Protection, based on the regulations that have been issued, is able to determine whether the plant has discharged sewage and whether that sewage does not meet the standards, or, for example, just discharged it, but standards haven't been exceeded yet.
So media topics like, I don't know, some dead fish, golden algae, and things like that, do you also investigate those?
Yes. When it comes to golden algae, there are a dozen or so points where samples are taken at least once a week and measured. So, as the Chief Inspectorate of Environmental Protection, we are constantly trying to monitor this and check if anything wrong is happening.
Okay. So today here on the Vistula in Warsaw, we're also checking, you said you do this less often, about once a month?
Yes, we get something called an environmental monitoring plan. Every month we take samples and perform the tests assigned to us by the Department of Environmental Monitoring.
Sure. So we also know that you can't swim in the Vistula here in Warsaw, but we'll also check in terms of the water quality.
Okay.
Whether it's okay or not, it's mostly manual. We just lower the bucket into the water.
Yes.
We collect that water.
Our job involves using a bucket. This one is 12 liters, so we'll need a bit of strength. The sampler just hit the riverbed. We have to play around a little so that the bucket tips over and collects the sample for us. And there you go, we've collected a sample. To make it easier for us, we'll pull out the insert. We need a form where we'll enter various types of data. We take out the meter, and here we have the electrodes. We have 3 electrodes, each of them measures a different parameter. Here we'll measure conductivity. So what do we do now? We just take it and drop it in. This device will be measuring for us all the time. So we have to tell it to find the point when it determines the reading is correct. If it makes a sound like tit, that means the value shown here has stabilized.
There's a sound.
Yes, we've measured the first parameter.
I already want the second one.
I'm giving you the second parameter now so you can do it. The wire stays because it doesn't matter to us. You need to disconnect this one. Just pull it out.
Yeah, isn't it with this one?
Yeah. And now we have to take this cover off the oxygen probe. You put it in.
And then I wait.
No, you have to turn it on.
Turn it on, since I need to do this, and press enter.
And enter. If this value is below 4 milligrams, then we should start thinking that something is wrong. That means there's not enough oxygen.
Okay.
We're concerned about a situation where there is...
And what if there's too much oxygen?
At that point, there's oxygen depletion. And our fish probably start dying, although I'm not sure about that. And now we have to do one more thing. We press enter to check what the pressure is.
I'm now taking the third measurement.
The third measurement?
By myself. Should I remove something here too?
Yes, this electrode can't be dry. We need to rinse it with distilled water.
Okay.
To make sure we're not introducing any contaminants. It's measuring the pH. And again, the same thing.
We're waiting for a sign, a signal.
All right, we have a result, 8.58.
pH.
Another parameter we need to record and can measure. This is temperature.
21.7.
7, yes.
Almost like in the Baltic Sea. Do we know from the results we wrote down there, for example, if it's possible to swim? What do these results indicate? Are these just basic tests for now?
They are. If, for example, the oxygen level were much lower, we could say something was wrong. If the conductivity was much higher, we could say that something is dissolved, that a lot of things are dissolved. But from these results, we can't really determine what the state of the Vistula is today. The samples have to be taken to the laboratory. And now we have a refrigerator. The refrigerator is cooled. We should cool them down to around 4 degrees Celsius. We take another cooler out of the refrigerator. It's partly to make it easier to carry. Today we'll choose a 2-liter plastic bottle into which we'll pour the sample. We'll put it in the fridge and take it to the laboratory.
Honestly, this water doesn't look the cleanest, but you say it's okay.
It's okay. The Vistula is unique. The Vistula, because it flows through a large part of our country, carries a lot of sediment, but more like dust. And now we screw the cap on. Of course, in a normal situation, well, here we don't really have to do it, we would have to label it. That means putting a sticker with the specific code for this sample.
We code the sample, put it in the cooler, and send the cooler to the lab.
Yes.
And our work ends here.
Yes. Congratulations.
Yes.
On your first day as a sampler.
Thank you very much. In this episode, I showed you what it's like to work at the Chief Inspectorate of Environmental Protection, where the knowledge and workload are immense. Be sure to write in the comments which other professions I should show on the Do Roboty channel and what else. See you in the next episode, and make sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. This is Wojtek Kaczmarczyk. I'm really glad you made it to the very end. Thank you for watching this video, and I encourage you to check out more videos on the Do Roboty channel. Click on the next video and see what interesting things I've recorded there.